I recently faced a father's worst nightmare. I just caught our HOA president sneaking into my house while Amy's son was home. Her excuse, she said it was just a routine safety check. Funny thing is, the only thing that needed checking that day was her face after my son destroyed her. Let me start from the beginning. First time I really knew, that Karen Livingston was something more than your garden variety neighborhood tyrant was. On a Tuesday, it was hot. It's a kind of sticky summer afternoon where the air itself feels lazy. I was pulling into my driveway, my son Leo, quiet in the passenger seat beside me, scrolling through something on his phone that probably involved more lines of code than the entire tax system. We'd just come from his orthodontist appointment. A bi-monthly ritual of pain and payment. As I killed the engine, my eyes caught a flicker of movement at our front door. It was her, Karen Livingston, in her signature blinding purple blazer that announced, "I run this place," slotting a master key into our deadbolt. She twisted it, but before the latch could fully turn, the door flew open a crack. Lo stood there, hoodie half-sipped, staring her down. She jerked the key back like it was on fire. "Miss Livingston," Leo sighed, voice calm. "Try that key again, and the lock auto emails every neighbor live." I stepped onto the porch, folding me arms behind him. Silent back up, exactly where the camera could see me. Only then did Karen notice us. She pulled the door shut with a soft click, not slamming it, but closing it with a second of smug ownership that made the hairs on my arm stand up. She adjusted the gaudy gold pin on her lapel, the official seal of the Eagles Crest Homeowners Association, and started down the walkway as if she'd just been watering my petunias for me. I was out of the car before the seatbelt had even finished retracting. My feet crunched on the gravel. I was apparently 3 days late in sweeping, according to her last. "Notice, Karen?" I called out. My voice was level, calmer than the storm brewing in my gut. She stopped dead, one sensible flat-soled shoe hovering over a pristine sidewalk. Muffed, she turned slowly, a mask of pleasant surprise sliding over her face. It was a terrible mask. Didn't fit right. Her eyes, small and hard like pebbles, gave hair away. "Alex, hello," she chirped, her voice a little too high. "Just doing a routine inspection. Your front door seemed a bit loose. I wanted to make sure it was secure for you." My front door was solid oak. It was about as loose as a bank vault. Routine inspection inside my house while I'm not home. I kept my hands shoved in my pockets to stop myself from clenching them into fists. Leo was getting out of the car now, his lanky 16-year-old frame unfolding with a quiet reluctance. He stood by the open passenger door, watching, his expression unreadable. Karen's smile tightened. "It's in the bylaws, Alex. Section C, paragraph 4. The HOA president retains a master key for emergency maintenance and compliance checks. I was simply ensuring the safe and security of your property." She said your property like she was talking a Buddha. Stray dog she had the right to put down. This wasn't the first time strange things had happened. A coffee mug moved from the sink to the counter, a closet door left slightly ajar. Little things designed to make you question your own sanity. I'd suspected, but I never had proof. Now here she was, bold as brass, practically admitting it. "So, you let yourself into my home without my permission?" "Without any notice, and without an emergency," I stated, letting the facts hang in the thick, humid air between us. "It was a potential security issue," she countered, her voice losing its cheerful lilt and taking on the sharp defensive edge I'd come to know from HOA meetings. "A loose door is a security issue. I fixed it by closing it properly. You're welcome." She gave me a curt nod as if she'd just done me the biggest favor of my life, and turned Toak away. The sheer, unadulterated gall of it was breathtaking. "Was like watching a burglar tell you he broke in just to make sure your alarm was working?" I took a step forward. "This is last time, Karen," I said, my voice low and hard. "The very last time you set foot in my house without a warrant or a handwritten invitation from me. Are we clear?" She stopped again but didn't turn around. I could see the muscles in her neck tense up. For a long second, she said nothing. Then, without looking back, she scoffed. It was a small, dismissive sound, but it echoed across the manicured lawn. "Mind your tone, Alex," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Remember who runs this neighborhood?" And with that, she walked away, leaving me standing in my own driveway, feeling a helpless, white-hot rage I hadn't felt in years. I looked over at Leo. He was staring at the front door, his jaw tight. He hadn't said a word, but I saw it in his eyes. His fortress had been breached. His safe space was no longer safe. That was the moment everything changed. It was no longer about misplaced mugs or passive-aggressive notes. It was about a predator who had just marked her territory. And that territory was my home. I knew then that I would do anything, absolutely anything, to protect my son. What I didn't know was that my quiet, brilliant son already had a plan of his own, a plan that went far beyond a simple deadbolt. The war had been declared, and Karen Livingston had no idea who she was fighting. She thought she was dealing with a tired single dad. She wasn't. She was dealing with a father bear and his genius cub, and we were about to build a trap she would never see coming. The question was, what kind of trap could possibly be clever enough to catch a snake like her? Moving to Eagle's Crest had been my big idea for a fresh start. After my wife passed, the city felt too loud, the memories too sharp around every corner. Leo, who was only 14 at the time, had retreated so far into himself that he barely cast a shadow. He found his solace in the glowing green text of Ackerman line, in the orderly, logical world of code. I found mine in the idea of green grass, quiet, streets, in a community where he could maybe, just may, feel safe enough to be a kid again. The brochure for Eagle's Crest looked like a dream, sparkling lake, and a promise of secure, community-oriented living. The homeowners association was pitched as a good thing. A group of dedicated neighbors ensuring the place stayed pristine. Our real estate agent had called the HOA President Karen Livingston wonderfully dedicated. Looking back, wonderful-eyed IT was a polite way of saying power-mad dictator with a laminating machine. For the first 6 months, it was fine. We settled in. I got a handle on the ridiculously specific trash can placement rules, and Leo seemed to like the quiet. He even made a friend, a kid from down the street who was also into computers. But then the notices started. Our lawn was a 1/4 inch too high. A garden gnome my late wife had loved was deemed aesthetically disruptive. Each violation came with a fine and a thinly veiled threat of further action. It was sighing, but I figured it was the price of admission to paradise. I paid the fines. I moved the gnome. I tried to fly under the radar. But Karen Livingston's radar was a military system designed to detect any hint of non-dash compliance. She thrived on it. At the monthly HOA meetings, she would stand at the podium in the community clubhouse, her voice ring with authority as she publicly shamed residents for minor infractions. She wasn't just enforcing rules. She was feeding on the control it gave. She knew who was having financial trouble, who was arguing with their spouse, who had a sick kid. She wielded these personal details like a weapon, and Syringevarian stayed in line. The master key was the ultimate symbol of her power. The rule was originally created for true emergencies, a fire, a burst pipe. When the owner was on vacation, in Karen's hands, it became a skeleton key to everyone's private lives. People would whisper about it. I swear she was in my house. My next-door neighbor, a sweet old woman named Mrs. Gable, told me once over the fence. My husband's military medals were out of their case, just sitting on the dresser. I never leave them out. But no one ever had proof. It was always just a feeling, a creeping sense of violation you couldn't quite put your finger on. Karen was smart. She was a ghost. My best friend Hank, a guy I've known since we were dumb enough to think jumping off a garage roof with a trash bag parachute was a good idea, thought I was being paranoid. Dude, she's an HOA lady, not a spy, he'd said over the phone. They're all a little crazy. Just buy a regulation height lawn gnome and call it a day. He didn't live here. He didn't see the fear in people's eyes when her car cruised slowly down the street. He didn't feel that cold dread that maybe, just maybe, Simeona had been walking through your home, touching your things, breathing your air. The day I saw her walking out of my house was the day the paranoia became a certainty. The conversation I had with Leo that evening was one of the hardest Steve ever had. We were eating dinner, the silence thick with what had happened. "She can't do that, can she, Dad?" he asked, pushing his food around his plate. "Legally, no," I admitted. "Morally, absolutely not. But she controls the board. It's her word against ours. And right now, we don't life any proof." He looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw the same fire in his eyes that I felt in my gut. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was anger. "What are we going to do?" he asked. It told him I'd look into new locks. It'd be a simple security camera. For the front door, he just nodded, but he had a look in his face I'd seen before. It was the look he got when he was working on a complex piece of code, seeing the solution in his head long before his fingers started to fly across the keyboard. "Camera is a deterrent," Hess said slowly, his voice quiet but intense. "It tells her we're watching. She'll just get smarter. She'll find another way." He was right. Poking the bear wasn't enough. We had to do more than poke it. Had to build a better cage. That night, after I thought he was asleep, I heard the soft, rhythmic click-clack of his keyboard coming from his room. The sound went on late into the night. It wasn't just surfing the web. He was building something. He was forging a weapon. The only question was, when he was finished, would we be re-Dido, use it? A week after the confrontation in the driveway, the official letter arrived. It was delivered by hand, tucked neatly into the handle of our front door. Its crisp white envelope looking offensively official against the dark wood. It was from the HOA Architectural Review Committee, a committee of 3 people, all chaired and controlled by Karen Livingston. The letter informed me that the small, unobtrusive solar panels I'd installed on the back slope of my roof, the side of the house no one could even see from the street, were in violation of a newly minted aesthetic code. The code, it seemed, had been passed just 2 days prior at an emergency session I had not been notified of. The panels had to be removed within 7 days or we would face a daily fine of $100. It was a declaration of war, plain and simple. She was retaliating, using the full bureaucratic weight of the HOA to punish for daring to stand up to her. When I showed Leo the letter, he didn't get angry, he got still. He read it twice, his eyes scanning the page. Then he looked at me. "She's not going to stop, Dad." "I know," I said, the paper crinkling in my fist. "I'll fight it. I'll call a lawyer." Leo shook his head. "A lawyer will take months. We'll have thousands in fines by then, she knows that. This isn't about the panels. It's about control. She wants us to know she can do whatever she wants." He walked over to his laptop, which was perpetually open on the kitchen table, turned the screen toward me. It was covered in lines of code, but in the center was a mock-up, a design that looked like a professional website login page. The logo at the top reads Crest HOA Community Security Portal. It looked official. It looked intimidating. It looked exactly like something Karen would love. "What is this?" I asked, leaning in. "It's Theckage," Leo said, his voice humming with excitement. "You said we needed a better cage." "Well, a normal security camera ice-like, a sign that says, 'Beware of dog.' She'll just avoid the dog. This is different. This isn't a deterrent. It's a trap," he explained his idea, and I hate to admit my jaw just about hit the floor. It was devious. It was brilliant. It was something only a 16-year-old witho supercom put. For a brain could dream up. He didn't want to install cameras to watch our house. He wanted to build a fake security system for the entire neighborhood and give Karen the keys. The plan was this. We would install a new state-of-the-art security system at our house, complete with a few dummy cameras in obvious places. Then I would go to the next HOA meeting and publicly, reluctantly announce that to comply with neighborhood security standards, I'd invested in this new system. And here was the kicker. I would offer Themaster administrative access to Karen as president, so she could help monitor the community for the safety of all residents. He called it the honeypot. It's a sweet, irresistible lure for a power-hungry bear. The community's security portal he designed was a complete fabrication. It was a ghost. When Karen logged in, she would think she was looking at a dashboard with access. 2 security feeds, resident data, and incident reports. She would feel like she'd hit the jackpot, giving her even more power, more control. But the truth was the exact opposite. The portal was a one-way mirror. Everything she did inside it, every button she clicked, every file she tried to access, every search term she typed would be logged, every keystroke, every mouse movement recorded. The system wasn't designed to watch the neighborhood. It was designed to watch her. It would build a perfect, undeniable, time-stamped record of her obsession and her abuse of power. Ish won't be able to resist, Leo said, high eyes gleaming. We're giving her exactly what she wants, or at least what she thinks she wants. The sheer audacity of it left me speechless. It was risky. It was borderline insane. It was also the single greatest idea I had ever heard. My son, my quiet, introverted boy, wasn't just playing defense anymore. He had designed an offense so sophisticated, so tailored to our Ronami-specific psychosis that it felt like something out of a spy movie. The decision was mine. Do I play by the rules and get slowly crushed by her tyrannical machine? Or do I trust my son and step into the abyss? Looking at the fierce determination on his face, I knew there was no choice at all. We were going to build his cage. But as we started down this path, a cold thought crept into my mind. What happens if the bear you're trying to trap is even more vicious and unpredictable than you ever imagined? The next 2 weeks felt like a covert operation. Our garage became a mission control. I bought a handful of cheap dummy security cameras online, the kind with a single blinking red light to make them look real. I mounted one conspicuously over the front door and another pointed at the driveway. Right beneath it, Leo swapped our deadbolt for a matte black smart lock, the beating heart of his trap. It was pure theater. The real work was happening on Leo's laptop. He coded day and night, fueled by pizza and an intense, quiet fury. I'd walk into the garage and he'd be completely lost in his work, his fingers a blur on the keyboard. He was building Portal, the digital trap, from scratch. He added features he knew Karen wouldn't be able to resist. A searchable Sedant database, filled with publicly available information mixed with harmless fake data. It's an incident report filing system, and even a live camera feed map of the neighborhood. The Mapoy is the masterpiece.
Oh, what is it?
It showed little camera icons on every house, but of course, none of them were real. If she clicked on one, it would just show a pre-recorded generic video of a quiet street looped to look live. The whole thing was a digital illusion. Best friend Hank came over one afternoon while we were in the middle of it. He took one look at the dummy cameras, the spools of wire leading nowhere, and Leo hunched over his computer like a machinist. Okay, I give up, Hank said, throwing his hands in the air. What nth world are you two cooking up? Are you seceding from the Union? Starting your own private militia? I sat him down and explained the whole plan. His eyes got wider and wider with every detail. When I finished, he was silent for a full minute, just staring from me to Leo and back again. Let me get this straight, he said slowly. We're building a fake spy network to give Tuth spy so you can spy on her spying on a fake network. That you built. Pretty Mac. Yeah, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. That is the most brilliantly stupid or stupidly brilliant thing I have ever heard, he declared. This lady is going to sue you into the Stone Age, or worse, she'll probably just put a lien on the Stone Age. But I gotta say, he grinned. I want a front row seat. The night before the HOA meeting was tense. The portal was finished. It was beautiful in a terrifying sort of way. Leo walked me through the back end, the part only we could see. It had a dashboard of its own, a log that would track every single action Karen took. We tested it a dozen times. It worked perfectly. Now it was my turn. I had to be the actor. I had toasted up in front of all my neighbors and sell this lie. I practiced my speech in the mirror, trying to strike the right balance of defeated homeowner and responsible citizen. I had to make it believable that I was handing over this power to her, not as a trap, but as a peace offering. The morning of the meeting, a new notice appeared on my door. It was a final warning regarding the solar panels. The fine was now officially active, backdated to the day before. She was tightening the screws. She's trying to make you angry, Leo Said, looking at the notice. She wants you to show up tonight and yell. She wants to look calm and in control. why Leo looked like a lunatic. He was right. Her strategy was to provoke, then play the victim. Our strategy was to play the lamb. Right up until the moment the trap sprung. That evening, the community clues was packed. Karen was at the podium, basking in the fluorescent lights. I waited until the new business portion of the meeting. Then I stood up. My heart was pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Karen," I began, my voice sounding shaky, which was actually perfect. "I received your final notice about the solar panels." A smug little smile played on her lips. "Yes, Alex, the rules are the rules." "Ickno," I said, letting out a sigh. "And? Look, I want to be a good neighbor. No, we got off on the wrong foot. The truth is, security is important to me, especially with a teenage son at home." He saw her lean forward. Her interest peaked. This was it. "So, I've installed a new comprehensive security system. I'd like to formally grant the HOA you specifically. As President, Master Administrative Access, so you can use this system to help keep an eye on things for the good of the community." A murmur went through the crowd. My neighbor, Mrs. Gable, looked at me with wide, confused eyes. Karen was stunned into silence. I had just handed her the biggest, shiniest key to the kingdom she could ever imagine. Her mind was probably racing, thinking of all the new ways she could peer into everyone's lives. For a moment that stretched for an eternity, she composed herself. "Well, Alex," she said, her voice dripping with false magnanimity, "that is a very generous and responsible offer. On behalf of the entire community, I accept." She thought she had one. She thought I had folded, that I had surrendered completely. But as I sat down, my phone buzzed in my pocket with a notification from Leo, who was monitoring from home. It was a single sentence. "She's creating her login right now." The bear had taken the bait. The question was, now that she was in the cage, what would she do with her newfound imaginary power? The first few days were quiet. On our secret back-end dashboard, Leo and I watched Karen log in and out of the portal. She was just exploring, clicking around the fake Amera feeds, browsing the resident database. It was like watching a shark circle a swimmer, just looking for now, getting a feel for the water. I could almost picture her in her beige house, a cup of tea in one hand, her mouse in the other, drunk on the feeling of omniscience. The first real test came a week later. There was a small dispute in the neighborhood about a dog barking. A resident named Mr. Henderson had a beagle that, according to his neighbor, howled at the moon. The neighbor had complained to Karen. Normally, this would result in a series of nasty letters and a fine, but now Karen had a new toy. We saw it happen in the logs. At 10:17 p.m., her user account, K. Livingston Admin, accessed the incident report feature. Then she navigated to the resident database and pulled up the file for Mr. Henderson. What she didn't know was that Leo had planted a little piece of bait in his file. He'd added a fake, digitally aged photo of Mr. Henderson's backyard. And in the corner of the photo, almost hidden behind a bush, was a small, unauthorized tool shed. The shed didn't exist. The photo was a complete fabrication. The next morning, Mr. Henderson found a violation notice on his door. It wasn't about his dog. It was about an unapproved auxiliary structure in his backyard, complete with a screenshot from our fake security portal as evidence. The fine was $500. Mr. Henderson, a retired history teacher who wouldn't build a birdhouse without a permit, was livid. He stormed into the next HOA meeting, waving the letter, his face beet red. "This is outrageous," he bellowed, pointing a trembling finger at Karen, who sat there looking as cool as a cucumber. "There is no shed in my backyard. There has never been a shed in my backyard." Karen simply smiled, her reptilian smile. "Mr. Henderson, the evidence is quite clear," she said, her voice calm and patronizing. "Our new community security system, generous slip provide. By Mr. Martin," she gave me a nod, "captured the structure quite clearly. The system doesn't lie." Half the room turned to look at me. I could feel their suspicion. Had I really given this woman a weapon to use against them? I had to fight the urge to stand up and blow the whole thing wide open right there. But Leo's words echoed in my head. Let her build the case against herself. Mr. Henderson was shouting now. It's a fake. That picture is a fake. Karen sighed dramatically. Please settle down. If you continue to be disruptive, I'll have to have you removed. She was seen the fake evidence from our fake portal to publicly gaslight and humiliate a man in his 70s. It was cruel, it was vicious, and it was exactly what we needed. We now had our first concrete piece of proof, had a digital trail showing. Her accessing the portal, viewing the fake photo, and we hoed the violation letter she generated based on that lie. She was no longer just a trespasser. She was active alive fabricating evidence to harass her neighbors. It was a major escalation. The logs on Leo's computer were no longer just a record of her snooping. They were becoming a criminal file. Hank called me that night, his voice a mix of awe and terror. I heard what happened to poor old Henderson, he said. You guys created a monster. She's using your fake stuff to go after real people. That's the point, Hank, I said, pacing the kitchen. We have to let her think the system is real. We have to let her trust it completely. But hearing the worry in his voice planted a seed of doubt. In my own mind, Henderson was a real person. He was embarrassed, angry, and out $500 because of our trap. Were we any better than her? Using deception to fight deception? Is this justice, or was it just a more complicated kind of revenge? We were walking a fine line, and the ground was getting softer with every step she took. I knew we had to be close. To the end game, because I wasn't sure how many more Mr. Hendersons I could stam-match. Karen had proven she would use the system to hurt people. The trap was working perfectly, maybe a little too perfectly. She was becoming bolder, more brazen with every login. What we didn't know was that her real target wasn't a tool shed or a barking dog. Her real target was me. She was about to use her own weapon to try and take the final shot. The fallout from the Henderson incident was exactly what you'd expect. Refused to pay the fine, and Karen, armed with her digital proof, put a lien on his house. The neighborhood was boozing. People were divided. Some thought Henderson was a cantankerous old man, getting what he deserved. Others, like Mrs. Gable next door, looked at me with worried eyes, as if I had personally handed a loaded gun to a madwoman. She was right in a way. The weight of that was starting to get heavy. We have enough, right? Asked Leo one night, staring at the growing log of Karen's activity. We can show this to a lawyer. We can show this to the HOA board. Leo was quiet for a moment, his face illuminated by the glow of the screen. We can, he said slowly. And what will happen? We'll vote her out. She'll pay a fine. In a year, she'll be back running for the board again. We've proven she's a bully. We haven't proven she's a criminal. He pointed to the screen. She's getting comfortable, Dad. She's starting to use the portal for everything. She's not just looking at fake cameras anymore. She's using its messaging system, its file storage. She thinks it's her own private secure server. He was right. We were at a crossroads. Do we pull the plug now and settle for a small victory, freeing Mr. Henderson, but leaving the snake wounded and angry? Or do we let it ride, digging for something deeper, something that would remove her from our lives for good? This whole thing had started because I wanted to protect my son, to make our home safe. But now, it was bigger than that. It was about what was right. It was about stopping a predator before she hurt anyone else. It was about justice. I made the decision. Okay, I said, my voice firmer than I felt. We see it through, but we have to be ready. She's coming for us next. I can feel it. It didn't take long. 2 days later, the letter came. This one wasn't about solar panels or gnomes. It was a formal notice of safety inspection. According to the letter, an anonymous tip had been filed through the community security portal, suggesting that our house had potential structural and electrical faults that posed a clear and present danger to the community. Thelator stated that Karen, in her capacity as HOA President, would be conducting a full top-to-bottom inspection off our home in 3 days' time. She would be using her master key to enter at 10 a.m. sharp. It was the checkmate move, or so she thought. She was using our own system against us, manufacturing a reason to get back inside our house. Shay probably figured we'd refuse, which would give her grounds to find us into oblivion, or even start foreclosure proceedings. If we agreed, she would get what she'd wanted all along. The Chanchetto walked through our home to assert her dominance, to look for any real violation she could find. My friend Hank nearly had a heart attack when I told him, "You have to stop her." "Alex, call the cops. I tell them she's harassing you." "With what proof, Hank?" I countered. "Watata, she's following the bylaws to the letter. She has an anonymous tip from a system I gave her access to. On paper, she's the hero, and I'm the guy with the dangerous house." This was her endgame. She wanted to break me. She wanted to stand in the middle of my living room and declare victory. But she was making the same mistake all arrogant people make. She was underestimating her opponent. She thought she was walking Gento, a house to inspect it. She had no idea she was walking onto a stage. "She scheduled it for 10 a.m. on Wednesday," I told Leo. "She thinks we'll be at work and school." Looked up from his keyboard, and a slow, cold smile spread across his face. It was a look I'd never seen on him before. It was the look of a hunter who knows the prey is just about to step into the snare. "Good," he said simply. "That gives me enough time to upgrade the streaming protocol." "Streaming protocol?" I asked, my blood running cold. "What's streaming protocol?" He turned his laptop around. He'd added a new function to our secret dashboard. It was a simple button with a skull and crossbones icon. He called it the no clear option. With one click, this button would take the live feed from the new real micro cameras we had hidden in our living room and send it to every single email address in the Eagle's Crest HA directory. He wasn't just going to record her. He was going to broadcast her live to the entire neighborhood. The moral crossroads was behind us now. We were on a direct path to a confrontation she couldn't lie or bully her way out of. We were going to let her walk right into the lion's den. But what we didn't know was that she wasn't just coming to look around. She was bringing her own venom. Wednesday morning arrived with a kind of dreadful stillness. The air wastic with anticipation. Leo and I were a bundle of nerves, a two-man army waiting for the final invasion. He had stayed home from school, and I had taken the day off work. But we made sure my car was gone from the driveway by 8 a.m. We were camped out at Hank's house, 3 blocks away, our mission control no remote. Hank was pacing a trench in his own carpet, chewing on his fingernails. "I feel like I'm an accessory to something," he muttered. "This is crazy. You're broadcasting your house being broken into. What if she doesn't do anything? What if she just walks in, looks around, and leaves? You guys will look like psychopaths." "She'll do something," Leo said, his eyes glued to his laptop screen. "Her ego won't let her walk away empty-handed." He had set up a new screen on his laptop. On the left was the view from our hidden living room camera, a high-definition wide-angle shot. And on the right was our secret dashboard, tracking her every move in the fake portal. At 9:58 a.m., her car, a pristine white SUV, rolled slowly down our street and parked directly across from our house. We watched on the real security camera feed from Hank's Wi-Fi. At 10 a.m. on Thedet, she got out. She was dressed in the same electric purple blazer, a clipboard in her hand. She marched up our walkway with a purpose, a general surveying the battlefield before the attack. She didn't even knock. We watched as she put the master key in the lock, turned it, and pushed the door open. She was in. For a moment she just stood in the entryway, her silhouette framed by themmerning light. She scanned the room, a smirk of triumph on her face. Then she stepped inside, letting the door click shut behind her. The show was about to begin. For the first few minutes, she did exactly what we expected. She walked around the living room, running her fingers over dusty surfaces, peering at family photos with a sneer. She made a few notes on her clipboard, probably fabricating violations. The silence in my own living room was so dense, it felt alive. Karen's pen scratched once more across the clipboard. Then she paused, tilting her head like a vulture, scenting a weak heartbeat. I was tucked in the narrow shadow between the bookcase and the staircase, close enough to smell the oversweet gardenia perfume she apparently bathed in. Leo's voice hissed through the barely audible earbud I jammed in earlier. "Dad, motion sensor shows she's 5 feet from camera 3. Stay frozen." Easy for him to say. Every muscle in my legs was begging to tremble. Karen drifted toward the family photos, lining the wall, pretending to admire them while her free hand tested picture frames for hidden safes. She tapped the glass over Elena's favorite butch snapshot, smirked, and moved on. At. Suddenly, the smart lock above the front door chirped. Leo's programmed heartbeat bing that registered each 30-second interval. Karen stiffened. The tiny lead went from soft blue to pulsing amber, an innocuous diagnostic pattern to anyone else, but I knew it meant tricording plus remote override armed. She stepped closer, mesmerized by theolite. My phone vibrated. Leo, let her try it. Wait for my cue. Karen Rosed, master key, curiosity overpowering caution. She slid it in. Click. Instantly, the house speakers, wired secretly the previous night, popped alive with a low, omnidirectional spaz rumble. It wasn't loud, but it vibrated the drywall like a passing freight train. Karen jerked back, hand flying to her chest. The rumble cut, replaced by an automated female voice Leo had synthesized from dozens of audiobook samples. Security Protocol 99 initiated. Please present Administrator Krintz. Karen's eyes went saucer-wide. She glanced at her clipboard as if somewhere between the dog barking complaints and hedge height citations, there might be an answer to that. Another message from Leo blinked on my phone. She either bolt or dig. Betting on dig. Karen chose dig. She marched to the router shelf under the TV, yanked out her phone, and started snapping pictures of the cabling. Evidence, no doubt, for a future violation about unregistered electronic security grids. While her back wasterned, I risked shifting. My weight, blood screaming through cramped calves, floorboard creaked. Karen froze midway through. Another photo. The phone's camera light haloed dust motes in front of her purple blazer. She pivoted, predator quick, scanning the room. I held my breath. Leo's automated voice filled the silence again, louder this time, projected from every smart speaker in the house. Unverified presence ejected in living area, commencing visual log. A camera shutter sound effect snapped 3 times. Bright white flashes strobed from ceiling bulbs, deliberately blinding. Karen staggered, knocked her clipboard against the coffee table, scattering pages across the rug. Pages titled Immediate Finds Martin Residence. From behind the staircase, I saw something new on her face, real furthin and quivering beneath layers of entitlement. She backed toward the hallway, retreating, but then the doorbell rang. Not a polite ding-dong. Leo had reprogrammed it to the harsh squawk of a siren. Karen spun, collided with the umbrella stand, cursed. Through the sidelight window, a brown uniformed Amazon driver waved a parcel. Wrong house, right time. Leo had rerouted my usual deliveries to arrive precisely now, as Karen yanked the door open. A fraction, Leo whispered through my earbud, Dad, duck right, camera for live. I slid into the dining room just as the delivery driver peered inside. Puzzled, Karen forced a brittle laugh, tried to shoo him away, but the driver, oblivious, held up his scanner for a signature. The second her grip tightened on the stylus, the smart lock chirpadagon, locking them both outside. Leo's synthetic voice boomed from the porch speaker. Administrator access revoked. Please contact security office. Karen's cheeks matched her blazer. She scribbled an illegible scrawl, snatched the parcel, and nearly threw it back at the driver before slamming the door. Inside Alani again, she exhaled. A shaky breath. My phone buzzed once more. Recording saturation 85%. Plenty of usable panic footage. I risked a glance around the staircase. Karen was pacing now, muttering, clutching her phone. Sweat darkened the fabric under her arms. A purple Rorschach of rage and confusion. The house had become a haunted maze. Every object whispering, she wasn't in control. She stopped at the edge of the oriental rug, eyes narrowing at the anomalous bevel of a floor vent. Don't lift it, I begged silently. Under that vent, camera 5 stared straight up. If she found it, the game got messy. A sudden pop echoed from his kitchen. Leo remotely toggling the fridge's ice maker. Cubes clattered into the tray like a burst of static. Karen jumped, heart clearly hammering, and spun toward the new sound, leaving the vent alone. I let out a breath I had noticed, holding another. Message from Leo. Diversion successful. She's rattled. Next, she'll go after the router. Ready to pivot to phase 2. It tapped back. Yes. And slid a fraction deeper into shadow. Karen squared her shoulders right where Leo needed her next. Your lampshade is an unapproved shade of beige, Hank whispered, trying to break the tension. That's a $200 fine right there. Then she did something unexpected. She walked over to our media console, knelt down, and started fiddling with the wires. Behind the television and the router. What is she doing? I breathed, leaning closer to the screen. Lo's fingers flew across his keyboard. She's not just inspecting, he said, his voice tight. She's trying to get on our Wi-Fi network. She must have her laptop with her. Sure enough, she pulled a slim laptop from her oversized purse. She sat on our sofa, my sofa, and opened it up. A few seconds later, a notification popped up on Leo's screen. New device connected? K. Livingston? LTP? She was on her network. Leo grinned. Welcome to the real trap, he whispered. The fake portal was just the bait. Getting her to connect her personal device to our home network, a network he now compelled telecontrad, was the snare. From the moment she connected, Leo could see everything she was doing on her own computer. It was a level of intrusion that made her master key look like a child's toy. We watched mesmerized ass open a chat program on her screen. A window popped up with a contact named J. Marlowe. Her fingers started typing. I'm in, she wrote. The network is open. Getting the data now. The reply from J. Marlowe came back instantly. Good. The buyers are waiting. We need the inventory lists from this address and the one on Elm Street, especially jewelry and electronics. Da-da-da-da-da. My blood went cold. This wasn't about HOA violations. This wasn't about power or control. This was a criminal enterprise Karen was using. Her master key to get inside of people's homes. Using her laptop to scan their networks for financial data, personal files, and lists of valuables, and then selling that information to who? Burglars, identity thieves, waspiger and dirtier than I had ever imagined. She was a high-tech Fagin running a burglary ring from the comfort of our community clubhouse. Leo was already working, his hands a blur. A man-it, he muttered. I'm pulling her hard drive. Everything. Every file, every email, every chat log. The stakes had just skyrocketed. This was no longer a neighborhood squabble. He had stumbled into a major felony in progress, and evidence was streaming directly to my son's laptop. Now the question wasn't just how to expose her. It was how. To do it without getting ourselves caught in the crossfire. The air in Hank's living room was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. We were watching a split screen of pure evil. On one side was Thela video of Karen Livingston in my house, casually looting our digital lives. Direct feed off her laptop screen as she chatted with her criminal associate about selling our information to a team of burglars. My heart was a drum solo against my ribs. This had spiraled so far beyond petty tyranny. HOA President. She was the Ringle leader of a sophisticated criminal conspiracy. She used her position, her master key, and her neighbors' trust as tools for a burglary operation. The inspections, the violations, it was all a cover to case their homes. To catalog their valuables for her crew, Mr. Henderson's shed was probably a distraction. While he was fighting, the fine her people were probably getting ready to hit his house. It was diabolical, and then it got worse. As if being a high-tech burger gluer wasn't enough. Karen revealed a new layer of her villain. She minimized her chat window and opened. As Mel nondescript bag she'd placed on my coffee table. She pulled out a small plastic baggie containing a white powdery substance. My stomach turned over. No way, Hank whispered, his face a poly. Is that what I think it is? She carefully sprinkled a small amount of the powder onto the surface of my glass coffee table, then took out her phone and snapped a picture. She opened her email, attached the photo, and sent Ito an address I recognized instantly. The anonymous tip line for the local police department. The subject line typed was simple. Drug activity at 124 Oak Drive. This was her masterstroke, her insurance policy. She wasn't just there to rob me. She was there to meme, to utterly destroy my life. If I fought back, if I challenged her, she would have a concerned citizen's photo of illegal drugs in my home. A photo she took herself after planting evidence. She would ruin my reputation, risk my custody of Leo, and bury me so deep in legal trouble, I would never see daylight again. That was it. The last shred of restraint, I had vanished. She had crossed a line from which there was no return. She had threatened my home, and now she was threatening my family, my very freedom. But before I could even roar in rage, Leo held up a hand. His face was calm, chillingly so. He was no longer a kid playing with computers. Who was a surgeon in the middle of a critical operation. "It's okay, Dad," he said, his voice steady. Better, actually? Better? I choked out. "Lo, she's planting drugs in our house." "No," he said, his eyes fixed on the screen. "And the whole world is about to see her do it." He pointed to their courting software. It was capturing everything. The chat logs with her accomplice, the live video of her planting the fake drugs, the screen capture of her sending the email to the police. It was a perfect, self-contained pack of her crimes delivered by her own hand. It was undeniable. It was irrefutable. It was beautiful. This was the real twist. The jaw-dropper wasn't just that she was a crook. It was the sheer multi-layered evil of her plan and the elegant, accidental perfection of our trap. We set out to catch a mouse and ended up catching a dragon. She thought she was weaving a web to trap me, but every thread she spun was another bar. In her own cage. The fake security portal had been the perfect lure. It made her feel so safe, so powerful, that she got slippy. She used our network, her personal laptop right there in the open, thinking no one could ever see her. She had no idea that the house she was in was the most heavily surveilled location in the entire state. And my 16-year-old son was the man behind the curtain directing the whole show. Now we had everything. The question of whether we had enough proof was laughably obsolete. We had a feature-length film of her committing multiple felonies. The time for hiding was over. The time for defense was over. It was time to attack. Leo looked up at me, his expression deadly serious. "Ready to push the button, Dad?" he asked. The nuclear option was armed and waiting. All that was left to do was light the fuse and watch her kingdom burn. The HOA meeting that evening was scheduled for 7:00 p.m. Karen, of course, would be presiding. Over it, she had no idea that we knew what she'd done. She probably felt invincible, floating on a cloud of her own malicious genius. She had evidence to put me away and believed she had gotten away with her digital heist scot-free. We left Hank's house and drove back home. Walking into my own living room felt surreal. The air was still, but it felt charged, electric. Could almost see the ghost of Karen Livingston sitting on my couch planting her poison. I looked at the coffee table and sure enough, a faint white residue was still visible on the glass. I didn't touch it. It was now part of a crime scene. Leo sat down at the kitchen island, his command center, and pulled up the portal. He had packaged the evidence into a single devastating video file. It was 5 minutes long. It started with her entering the house, showed the chat logs with her accomplice, cut to the live footage of her planting the drugs, and ended with a screen capture of the email she sent to the police. He'd even added captions. It was a masterpiece of righteous vengeance. My phone buzzed. It was Mrs. Gable from next door. "Alex, are you coming to Thamening tonight?" Karen put a new item on the agenda, an emergency vote to address problematic residents. "I think she's coming for you." "Don't worry, Mrs. Gable," I said, a grim smile on my face. "I'll bet her and I'll be bringing a presentation." We walked toward that community clubhouse. I had never felt so calm in my life. The anger had burned away, leaving behind a cold, hard certainty. Leo walked beside me, his laptop bag slung over his shoulder. He wasn't just my son anymore. He was my real partner. We were walking into the arena, not as victims, but as gladiators. Theklabas was full. The mood was tense. Karen was at the podium looking polished and severe. She saw me walk in and gave me a tiny predatory smile. She thought this was her moment of ultimate triumph. She flew to the meeting with some boring procedural announcements, her voice smooth and confident. Then she moved to the new business. "Some of you are aware," she began, her eyes sweeping the room. "We have had ongoing issues with certain residents who refuse to comply with our community's standards of safety and decency. It is my duty to protect this neighborhood from such elements. She was about to name me. I could feel it. But before she could get the words out, I stood up. "Excuse me, Karen," I said, my voice ringing out in the quiet room. "Before you continue, I believe there's a presentation you'll want to see. In fact, I think everyone here will." She looked at me annoyed. "This is not on the agenda, Alex?" "Oh, I think itis," I replied. "It's about community safety. It's about who is really protecting this neighborhood." I looked at Leo. He gave me a sharp nod, hit a button on his keyboard. At that exact moment, every single cell phone in Therum buzzed or chimed. An email had just gone out to the entire HOA mailing list. The sender was Eagles Crest FAQ. Subject line was, "A special presentation from your HOA president." The body of the email contained only a video link. A confused, murmur-filled Therum. People pulled out their phones. One by one, they clicked the link. The first gasp came from the front row. It was followed by another and another, until a wave of shock and horror washed over the entire room. On dozens of tiny screens, the video was playing. They were all watching Karen Livingston walk into my house. They were reading her criminal chat logs. Their eyes widened as they saw her pull out the baggie and sprinkle the white powder on my table. A collective audible gasp went through the room as they watched her frame me in high definition. Karen's face went from smug too, confused, too horrified as she saw the screens light up around her. She didn't understand what was happening. Her world was crumbling in real time, and she didn't even know why. Then her own phone buzzed. She looked down at it, her hands trembling. She saw the email. She saw the link. Her face turned the color off ash. At that exact moment, the double doors at the back of the clubhouse burst open. Two uniformed police officers stepped inside, their faces grim. "Karen Livingston," one of them called out, his voice booming. "You need to come with us." The showdown was, here, there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Every screen in the room was a witness. Every neighbor was a juror, and the verdict was guilty as sin. The world seemed to move in slow motion. Karen Livingston stood frozen at the podium, her face a mask of disbelief. All the color had drained from it, leaving behind a pasty, slack-jawed horror. The entire room wassailing, the only sound being the tiny audio from a dozen cell phones, all playing the video of her crimes. The police officers walked down the center aisle, their footsteps echoing on the linoleum floor. They didn't hurry. They didn't need to. The crowd parted for them like the Red Sea. Karen's eyes darted around the room, looking for Annalie, an escape route, anything. But she found only the shocked and disgusted faces of the neighbors she had terrorized for years. Her reign was over, and it was ending here publicly humiliately under the harsh fluorescent lights of the community clubhouse she had treated as her personal kingdom. One of the officers reached the podium and spoke in a low, firm voice that still managed to carry through the room. "Ma'am, you are under arrest for breaking and entering, conspiracy to commit burglary in Falinga, false police report." He took her arm. For a second, it looked like she might fight, that some of her old fire would flare up. But then she just crumpled. The fight went out of her. She was no longer a tyrant. She was just a common criminal who had finally been caught. As they led her away in handcuffs, a second detective, a man in a rumpled suit with tired but sharp eyes, walked over to me. "You're Alex Martin?" he asked. I nodded, my throat suddenly dry. "My son and I, we know," he said, cutting me off. He wasn't smiling, but his eyes shelled a glimmer of something I couldn't quite read. "We got an anonymous tip about a half hour ago, with a link to that video and a full data dump from a certain laptop. It was the most well-documented open case I've ever seen." He looked over at Leo, who was standing quietly beside me, looking down at his shoes. The detective's gaze lingered on him. "Your son?" "Yes," I said, putting a protective hand on Leo's hooder. "Leo?" The detective nodded slowly. "The tech guys at the precinct here, having a field day with this?" He said. "The network infiltration, the data capture, it's seamless, professional grade, far beyond anything we've seen from a local criminal crew." He turned his full attention to Leo. "Leo, can I have a word with you?" My heart seized. Were we in trouble? Had our digital vigilantism crossed illegal? Line but detective's tone wasn't accusatory. It was impressed. He led Leo a few feet away, and I watched them talk. The detective was pointing at Leo's laptop, asking questions. Leo, for his part, started to explain, his hands moving as he described code and protocols and network architecture. The shy, quiet kid was gone. In his place was a confident expert briefing a senior officer. After a few minutes, the detective came back over to me, leaving Leo to talk to another officer who looked at him with undisguised awe. "Mr. Martin," the detective said, a small smile finally breaking through. "Your Sony's something else. You know that, right?" "I'm beginning to realize that," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "He just wanted us to be safe." "Well, he did a lot more than that," the detective said. "He dismantled a burglary ring that's been hitting 3 counties for the last 6 months. The J. Marlowe from those chat logs is a guy we've been after for a long time." He paused, then dropped Thefenol, unbelievable bombshell. "We have a new youth program at the department, an internship, a paid one, in our cybercrime division. We work with gifted kids, give them a positive outlet for their skills, a way to use their talents for good. I'd like to offer Leo a spotif. He's interested." I just stared at him, speechless. An internship, a pay job with the police. What started as a desperate act of self-defense, a way to protect our home, had turned into a career opportunity for my son. It was the most incredible, jaw-dropping twist in a story already full of them. I looked over at Leo. He was showing the officer how he built the fake portal. Hugh was beaming, energized, and in his element. He wasn't a victim anymore. He wasn't just my quiet son who needed protecting. He was a hero. The kid who fought the monster, not with fists, but with brains, had just been recruited to be a monster hunter. The war was over. We had one. And a whole new, unexpected future was just